Our health impacts the way we move through the world. The stories you hear on Overlooked illustrate this so well. I hear from listeners all the time who tell me the show helped them understand their own health in a new way or gave them language for something they'd been experiencing. The idea that this podcast could help someone be bolder in their self-advocacy is important to me. So I'm creating a storytelling workshop called First Person Health. Craft, record, and produce your own powerful health narrative. Take a look at our show notes to learn more about the workshop and to sign up.
All right, so here I am on a street in Manhattan. And what I did in my career many times over was something that traditional journalists call man on the street interviews, or vox pops, voice of the people. And I used to hate the term man on the street, right? Because obviously it's inherently sexist to call it that. But on this episode, I only want to hear from men. So I'm going to try and find some men to talk to. And I'm going to ask them, what should men's role in women's health be? So let's see how we go.
I think not every man is well informed about women's health. So I think, just being supportive in terms of what you can do to help out.
So what does being supportive look like for you?
Say it's an invasive procedure and you need to help with providing transportation or helping in terms of recovery, things like that. You have a conversation with the person and say, hey, what can I do to help? And kind of go from there. And then hopefully you have an open and honest conversation.
And is that what you've done in your life?
I try as much as possible. I know, sometimes it's not the easiest thing to do because everyone has their own things going on.
So wait, what makes it not easy?
Like day-to-day life. I work, my wife works, and there's times where personal lives kind of come second place to what's going on. Yeah. But again, I think it's something that you can always work towards and find a way around it.
What should a man's role in women's health be?
Just to listen, I guess. There's a lot men don't understand from a woman's point of view, and if you just take the time to listen to that point of view, then you can learn something and then relay that on to other people that don't know.
What should men's role in women's health be?
Be a support system and be advocates for the women that they love and care about in their lives.
Yeah. So tell me what being an advocate looks like. What does it look like for you?
Trying to understand the complications that they go through, the issues and the challenges that they face in the medical system right now, and finding efforts in different organizations that they're passionate about to be a part of and help support.
Oh, that's really great. When you say the issues they face in the medical system, do you have an example of that?
The expense and the high price of IVF right now is kind of outrageous.
Yeah.
I haven't experienced a lot of it yet in my life, but if I do, I'll be there to support and advocate as much as I can.
Really quick, okay. What should men's role in women's health be?
Taking them to the doctor and getting them checked up.
Yeah. Do you do that?
Once a year.
Okay. Do you have any challenges doing that? No?
I don't have any
All
challenges.
good?
Well, I don't get into the intricacies of it.
Right.
The doctor will take care of
So you're
that.
a supportive role? Yeah. Do you guys have anything to...
I love my wife. How's that?
Well, what are the challenges you find supporting her health?
She is very independent, so I really don't even have to play a role except for, being supportive.
Right.
And thank God she's been healthy, so we really haven't had to.
What does it look like being supportive for you?
You don't want that answer, do you?
That's exactly what I'm asking.
No, I don't. I honestly don't
I'll
know.
tell you, it's actually his wife taking him to the doctor and the other way around.
That is true.
All right, thanks guys. Good luck. Okay, look, that was in no way a scientific sampling. That was very, very random. But did I just luck out with my man on the street interviews, or are men kind of keen to talk about this? If you know someone who has strong feelings about men's role in women's health, get them to record a voice memo and send it over to me. I've come to the conclusion that moving the needle in women's health can't be done and shouldn't be done only by women. Everyone has to be in on this, regardless of gender or generation. But how does this get done? We live in a world that was built for men, but men themselves, individual men, all the guys you know who love you and support you, I do believe that they want to be included in this journey. So how do we bring them in? How do you turn men from not just supporters of women's health, but champions of women's health?
This is Overlooked, and I'm Golda Arthur. I wanted to dig a little deeper into this question of what is the role of men in women's health. And so I talked to someone who's been talking about women's health most of his life.
So the conversations that get giggles out of people, like periods, menstruation, all these types of things, it was just normal talk.
This is Sanj Singh, and there's a reason that this is normal talk for him.
So my mom was, rest her soul, an OBGYN. And of course, I'm married. I've got 3 daughters. They're all in healthcare. So the oldest is a professor of obstetrics and gynecology. The other's a physiotherapist. The other's a nurse.
Sanj told me that growing up, the dinner table talk at his place revolved around medicine and health and women. But more than this comfort around talking about women's health, Sanj has a curiosity about what actually underpins it.
Overlooked is the whole idea of women are just seen differently by the system. I'm still doing a discovery process of the reasons behind it, because once we understand that fully, you can develop strategies that are effective.
Sanj Singh is the CEO of a startup called Temple Therapeutics, which is tackling some of the toughest problems in women's health, like endometriosis and adhesions. So I think he's pretty qualified to answer the question, what should men's role in women's health be? That's coming up after the break. Okay, while we're on the subject of men, I want to tell you about a newsletter I really enjoy reading, and I think you will too. It's called Recalculating, and it's written by Ignacio Pereira. Ignacio writes about navigating manhood, fatherhood, and identity. And Recalculating is creating a community that helps understand masculinity. Ignacio writes with honesty and insight and tenderness. It's very compelling, and I find myself not just reading his newsletter, but forwarding it on to people. I think you'll probably do the same. I'll include a link in the show notes so you can find out more and subscribe to Recalculating. Now, back to the episode. Hi, Sanj. Welcome to Overlooked. You're the first guy I've had on the show, so really welcome to Overlooked.
Well, I should feel special. I appreciate the opportunity, Golda. Happy to be here and contribute and add value from maybe a different perspective.
I'm excited also to talk about the topic today, which is the role of men in women's health. But before we get into that, I want listeners to learn a little bit more about you. So tell me about your company, Temple Therapeutics.
So look at Temple Therapeutics. The body's your temple. I mean, that's really where the name came from. The idea that we have and the mission we have is to look at the whole body and the whole female body as a system, as opposed to just specific areas. We're pioneering a new era in precision medicine and women's health. The key part, which seems like a no-brainer for the world, is use female biology to develop products for females. It sounds very simple, and unfortunately it hasn't been the course of action for a lot of years. So how do we do it? We made a conscious effort. We had access to validated biobanks in female cancers, endometriosis, fibrotic disorders, and we use those biobanks to develop therapeutics, diagnostics, even devices. We haven't developed a device yet, but we see those as tools. A lot of people in biotech ask companies, hey, are you a therapeutics company? Are you a diagnostic company? Are you a device company? Like, what are you? We're a solutions company.
A solutions company. I like that. Well, okay, this next question is going to take us into talking about the role of men in women's health. Working in women's health is a very broad field. And as a man working in women's health, what do you struggle with?
I'm a double minority, Golda. So as a women's health forum that I was invited to, and I was the last one on the panel, and we were doing the introductions, and 75-80% of the room were women. And got to me and said, let's address the elephant in the room. I said, what is a brown male doing in women's health? I think the idea for me, I don't see a problem. I see it as challenges. Once we start talking about what we do, people don't pay attention to whether I'm male or female or what have you. Our axioms resonate. The data doesn't represent you. It may not suit you. And if you can't diagnose a disease, how are you going to treat or develop products? That encapsulates the challenge of women's health, but it also speaks to our strategy.
Right. Well, that does sound exciting and intriguing all at once. I want to ask you for the short answer to this next question, Sanj. What is the role of men in women's health?
Let me answer it the way that I think men are uncomfortable talking about it. Just picture a bar and a few guys having beers, right? Maybe they've played golf or slow pitch or whatever. Women's health doesn't come up as a topic. And so it's not part of that culture where in just normal conversation that somebody's going to bring up gynecological issues. I like to disrupt that. I've done this at receptions and cocktail parties. In fact, I remember this one recent one was in Whistler, and there was a woman, a man come up. They're both colleagues. And of course, they see the name tags, usual networking, hey, what does Temple do? Blah, blah, blah. Erica asked that question. Patrick was the other fellow. I told her it's a women's health company. And she goes, oh, tell me more about what you do. I turned to Patrick and I said, Patrick, before I explain to Erica what we do, I'm going to mention things like menstrual cycles, menopause, endometriosis, gynecological health, things that you may be really uncomfortable with. And I just softened the blow. The interesting thing, Golda, is that then I turned to Erica and explained. He thanked me. He goes, I didn't know that. I had no idea. Because what I did was I thought about everything that might go through their heads if I mentioned something that made them uncomfortable and addressed it head up. Completely diffused it. And by doing that, they were open to listening. So I use this strategy now every single time. And I've never had anyone so far, males, go anything other than curiosity. And then, guess what? They start filling in the gaps. They go, you know what? My wife's girlfriend has endo. The role for males, I see, like people like myself and others who are involved in that, is to strategically and carefully, tactfully, introduce the subject matter in a way that is not threatening, not uncomfortable, and then make them, for lack of a better word, champions or evangelists.
Okay, so follow-up question number 1 here, Sanj. What if instead of Erica and Patrick, it was Eric and Patrick and like 3 dudes standing at an event? How would you have approached that differently?
I've had that situation as well. In fact, we had a conference call last week with a social impact venture fund person, a man, and a professor who was a male. And they were interested in learning about what we were doing. I asked them, I said, what's the reason? The next follow-up question to them is, what do you understand as women's health? That's how I introduce it. Or have you had experience with any of your family members or friends going through any type of ovarian cancer, endometrial cervical cancers, anything like that? It's just addressing it head up and not being afraid to. Now I'm comfortable with it because like 3 daughters grew up, so I didn't need a GPS to find hygiene products. I knew where they were on the shelf. I think it's the idea of just making them comfortable, but trying to relate it to their own experience.
So this is my problem with the term women's health. And actually, I certainly use it as a shorthand when people say, what is overlooked about? Or what is it that you're doing? We all use it as a shorthand. And there is no man that has no idea about women's health, right? Because everybody knows and cares for a woman somewhere who's dealing with a health issue, I think. But I think the bridge that needs to be crossed is how do you go from my mother has ovarian cancer, my wife is in perimenopause, my sister has endo. How do you go from that to turning men into actual champions for all of women's health? How does that bridge get crossed?
I know how I do it. It's having an honest conversation, open one. So here's an example. So we spun out a new company called Temple Orthobiologics. It's a sports medicine company. The focus is on women's health. So the question, I tell them that, I said, it's a sports medicine company. I said, with the focus on women's health. I said, do you consider orthopedics a women's health issue? Most of them say no. I said, well, here, let me give you the stats. And I gave them the stats, like 70% of joint replacements are done in women. Women are 6 to 8 times more likely to get ACL injuries. Even women are not familiar with those stats. And all of a sudden, their mind has shifted to curiosity. And that's the challenge. The moment you get them to shift to curiosity, you have planted the seed of a champion. As soon as they get curious, I didn't know that. They say, tell me more. And I think that's the first step, is to get them to open the door and introduce something, and then try to find something that they can relate to. Not saying it's going to work for everyone, but that's my approach, is to increase curiosity, because they don't know, a lot of them.
That is a great point about curiosity. You know, my problem is that as a grumpy menopausal woman, I have neither the time nor the inclination to inspire curiosity in men about my health or the health of women in general. And I think I have to change my approach, because the stakes are too high, really, for men to not be curious, to not be champions. So that's something to think about.
You know, there's a balance, Golda. You've experienced it firsthand. I haven't. Like, what is the objective, right? So for other males, right? The objective is to open their mind, to create a portal, a slight little creak in the door, then you got them hooked. And they become your champions. Not all of them will become champions, but at least you've got their mind open up. And the next time the subject matter comes up, they have a few little ammunition in their own belt, because every guy wants to feel like they're smart, right? Hey, I got something to say. Leverage that idea of solving problems, when technically a lot of women just want men to just listen to them and not try to solve their problem. You know, it's tough. But I think more and more I've seen over the last 2-3 years, especially at bio conferences, you're seeing an education going on, and the work that you're doing and others, I think it's phenomenal to increase that awareness level.
Well, let me draw us to a close by asking you what I ask all my guests on this show. What do you think is the most overlooked aspect of this topic, and where is that inequality felt most deeply?
Well, that's a deep question, as the last one, right? So I think number one is the appreciation, like the ripple effect that an unhealthy woman has on society is not appreciated by the masses until it affects them personally. The best way to showcase the underappreciation is remove the woman out of the picture and everything falls apart. Like, think about that as society. You take women, like the World Health Organization said that 60% of the poverty that's in developing countries is due specifically to the health of the woman, because they are the caregivers. They are, so a lot of times, the breadwinners. They are doing more things. They are the ones that are stressed more so than, you know, and it's that lack of appreciation. But I think one thing you don't want to do is piss women off, because things will happen. That's one group you just don't want to, don't want to cross. They will not go away, and they will not be overlooked.
What a wonderful way to end this interview. Sanj, thank you so much for talking to me on Overlooked, and best of luck with the work that you do.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure talking to you, Golda, and all the best with your podcast. I think you're doing awesome.
Overlooked is here for information and empowerment, but not medical advice. Every person's body is unique, so if you have questions, it is best to speak to your doctor or healthcare provider. We're building a community around women's health so that no one is overlooked. If you'd like to be part of it, hit the follow button on this podcast, wherever you're listening to this. Or you can show us some love by writing us a review and sharing this episode with someone. Overlooked is written and created by me, Golda Arthur. Jessica Martinez de Hoz is the show's producer. You can stay up to date with the show by signing up for the newsletter and following us on Instagram and LinkedIn. We read every review and email, so write to us, hello@overlookedpod.com. Thanks for listening.